Back in 1968, Ford launched the Escort, and over the next 31 years it was to become the most successful Ford car sold ever, and that means even outselling the legendary Model T. Over the years it's been built in America, in Belgium, in Germany, in Spain, and of course in Britain. And in the UK it's become the country's best-selling car every year since 1982. Why has it been so popular? Well, because the appeal of the Escort has been truly universal. Even though it was a bestseller, Escort soon endeared itself to the nation. I had a neighbour who bought a new Mark I and called it her little sewing machine. So why was it so popular? Well, to some people, it's still the only car. There's a thriving Escort owners club, and they're fiercely proud of their treasured Escorts. Who better to tell us the car's secrets? Nigel, a man with two Escorts. Tell me, this blue one here looks almost new.
Yes, well, it's got original 15,700 miles on the clock.
Is there a lot of enthusiasm for the Mark I Escort?
I would say so. I mean, there are lots of clubs which are around whereby people are trying to meet and try and keep these on the road.
So why is the Escort of interest to club owners? What do you see in it?
Well, it's sex appeal, really, you know, truly.
They used to say it was the original Coke bottle shape.
Yes,
I mean, is that it?
Yeah, the Coke bottle, yeah, you can see it down the side.
Mark I predictably evolved into Mark II, a little squarer, a bit more upright, and inside a bit more refined. But did it lose some of that Coke bottle character of the Mark I? Well, probably it did, but that didn't stop the love affair. Now, Jill, you're representing the sporting Escort Owners Club. Tell me about the sporting side of it.
Well, we've got the only cars that we actually have in the club are Mark 1s and Mark 2s and Mark 3s rear-wheel drive conversions.
And is this a great advance over a Mark 1?
I think so, yeah. It's got more, I don't know, refinements to it. It's not as noisy and it's a bit comfier, I think, anyway. The interior and the engine and things like that, obviously with it being a newer car than a Mark 1, the technology moves on and it gets a lot better.
So would you like to be in an RS or an XR2 or 3 or something?
No, definitely not, no. I'm quite happy with my Mark 2.
So Mark, this is an example of how Ford got more into performance with the Escort. Tell me about this car.
This is a 1980 Mark II RS 2000, pretty similar to the Mark II Mexico, except for the Mexico had the 1600 engine, and this is as I say, the 2 litre. So with a 2 litre engine in quite a light car, this was quite a performance car. In the right hands, it was one of the best cars of the day, yeah, without a doubt, yeah.
With Mark III came a revolution. The front wheels started pulling Escorts along rather than the back wheels pushing them. And the car got bigger too, with Ford's sights firmly settled on Volkswagen's hugely successful Golf. Mark IV came and went with little more than a raised eyebrow of surprise, but then came the Mark V, bigger, softer, and a huge marketing campaign from Ford to convince us that this was the Escort we'd always promised ourselves. Oh yeah? So 1992, Ford upgraded it to the Mark V, and we in the press universally hated it. We thought it was soggy, it didn't handle, it was harsh and horrible. What did the Ford enthusiasts think of it?
About the same, I think.
They then paid a lot of attention to handling and ride, didn't they, later on? So by sort of mid-90s, they got it almost sorted out.
On the Cosworths, I think they probably spent all the money on them. You know, they just forgot about these like the yesteryears, isn't they, of the Escorts.
It took Ford an amazingly long time to sort out the basic Escort Mark V faults, but several facelifts, body-coloured bumpers and smiley grills later, it actually became a very nice car, especially when they threw away the bag of nails masquerading as an engine and slotted in Z-Tech. From the very earliest days, the competition potential of the Escort was obvious, and Ford Competition's Department of Borum merged seamlessly into special vehicle operations to create some of the most exciting cars on both road, track and forestry rally stage. Escort dominated the world rally scene, saloon car racing, and before long, every aspect of competition motoring, from bangers and hot rods to the most sophisticated works cars. Homologation ruled. To compete in international events, they had to build cars for the road. And that meant that cars like the RS, the XR and the Cosworth could be bought and enjoyed by us mere mortals. Terry, almost from the word go, the Escort was a successful competition car. I mean, when did Ford realise that they had such a quick car on their hands?
I think the start of it was the Escort twin cam. They were out there competing on international rallies and getting results, but they decided they needed a lot more power. So they went to Cosworth, and Cosworth came up with the BDA engine, and that was the birth of the RS 1600, which is this car here.
So here we are in 1999 with the car that Ford say will replace the Escort, the Focus. But the Escort story is by no means all over. It's still going to be built on the Halewood plant at least until the year 2000 and probably through to 2001 when the plant will start to build the new baby Jaguar. Demand for Escort, especially from fleet customers, is still strong. We're going to see this car around for many years to come.
The 166 is the latest car to join the Alfa Romeo range, and it completes a process of renewal that began in 1994. And the 166 is a flagship, and as becomes a flagship, it's big. Not that being big means it doesn't look good. To me it looks smart, like a bouncer in a very expensive dinner suit. These 16-inch alloy wheels help. They kind of fill out the arches and make it look big and mean and add to the image. But one of my initial impressions concerned the headlights, which to me at first glance look decidedly screwed up and small. But in the same way that if you say a word over and over again, gradually it changes its sound. If you look at a car lots and lots of times, gradually it starts to look different. And now when I look at these headlamps, I tend to see them integrated in with this rather neat grille unit as one unit. And it actually looks quite good and quite different. But there is one overriding and one most important feature about this car, and that's this, the badge. You see, what we have here is a large European car. And large European cars in this sector have traditionally been a complete flop. Witness Renault and their Safran and Peugeot and their 605. They certainly haven't sold in big numbers. Which means this car is going to go into the ring against some pretty heavyweight opposition. If we think about it, we've got BMW's 5 Series, we've got Audi's A6, and of course we are treading into serious Mercedes territory here. So what's it going to have that the others haven't? Well, it looks good, but then it could be said that so did the Peugeot and so did the Renault. It offers great value for money. For one thing, it's cheap to buy in the first instance, and then having done so, you get just about everything on it. But then so did the offerings from Peugeot and Renault. The one thing that it most definitely does have that they perhaps haven't got is that badge and that heritage. The people at Alpha are doubtless going to be hoping that the work they've put into the fantastic 156 and the warm response it received from all and sundry is going to pay off when it comes to the 166 and mean that people are going to be more than happy to buy Alpha. The image has always been right, the history, the heritage, the pedigree. Fact was, they used to fall apart. Well, the 156 shows no signs of doing that, and at first glance, neither does the 166. The exterior looks fantastic. Slide inside and it's absolutely beautiful in here. This is one of several trims available inside. It's called the sports trim, but it's indicative of the standard of all of them, and it's beautiful. Detailed touches abound. There's badges everywhere. There's beautiful stitching. It's very well put together, very comfortable, very practical, ergonomically very sensible. There's useful hatches, plenty of oddments storage. Then you've got to get on the move. Well, there's going to be 4 engines in total. At the bottom, but it's unfair to say that, is the 2-litre 4-cylinder twin spark. It's unfair because that's the classic engine in this standard of car and a classic engine from Alfa Romeo. There's then going to be that same engine with a turbo fitted, which will be an awful lot of fun. There's a 2.5-litre V6, there's a 3-litre V6, and ultimately there's going to be the 2.4-litre turbo diesel called the JTD, which will be absolute state of the art. It'll be direct injection, common rail, everything going for it. And interestingly, both the diesel and the 3-litre V6 will be fitted with a 6-speed manual gearbox, which says a lot about the way Alfa are going to be marketing the diesel and the importance of that being seen as an increasingly sporting brand. What can beat the squeak of denim on leather? The leather in here is an optional extra, but given that the prices in the UK are expected to start at around about £23,000, the car is going to be priced very competitively against the opposition from Germany anyway. And for that £23,000, you do get electric windows front and rear, a fair amount of kit, including, most importantly, for me, the best gizmo of all, which is this screen. It's a kind of central unit that contains the controls for pretty much everything. Integrated control system, we've got our main and audio, we've got our air conditioning system controlled through here, we've got our navigation system, trip meter, climate control. It's actually quite clear and quite easy to use as well, which is pretty refreshing if you ask me. In the inevitable compromise between sports driving qualities and the comfort demanded by the company car driver, Alfa Romeo have definitely erred on the side of comfort, but that's to be expected. The 156 really is there to be the driver's car. Having said that, yes, there is a degree of body roll. Yes, if you push it through corners, it does start to lean a bit, but there's plenty of grip there, and it is very controlled body roll. It makes for quite a pleasant drive. There is a good compromise here. The rear suspension from the 156 is carried over onto this, the 166, so a multi-link rear suspension setup and a degree of pre-programmed oversteer. So if you lift off midway through a corner or midway around a roundabout, the car will turn in nicely, which makes for overall a pretty pleasant driving experience, and it makes for the best compromise really between being able to carry 4 people in comfort and style, and if you're out on your own, have a bit of fun as well, which if you've got an Alfa Romeo, you're going to want to do, aren't you?
One wonders what life must have been like in the 20s and 30s if you were one of the famous Bentley boys. Dashing men who lived life to the full, drank hard and raced hard at famous circuits all over Europe.
Right through the decades, the factory at Crewe have produced some truly memorable cars. How about this one? A 1956 Bentley Continental S1 Fastback, which, if you're interested, is for sale at this dealership in Cheshire. Price around £45,000. It's absolutely immaculate. It stands the test of time even today. But if you want a Bentley today, the car to buy is this, the new Arnage Saloon. But is it good enough to take on the world's best and transport Bentley into the new millennium? Now, I've never driven a car before that costs as much money as this one does, and to be honest, it's rather a daunting thought. When you think that the average house price across the UK is about £75,000, and that this car costs twice as much, it's a worrying thought, maybe. However, the days of Bentley buyers being sat back there, lapping it up in the rear, thankfully are generally over. What's the point in buying this sort of car and not being able to enjoy it? You want to be sat here, at the heart of things, revelling in all that power from a BMW engine. The shame of it.
The Arnage and the Silver Seraph, both launched in 1998, were styled by Graham Hull. It's an all-new body shell over the previous Rolls and Bentley models, with greater torsional rigidity, giving improved aerodynamics and fuel efficiency. It has a very sleek appearance, certainly when compared to the previous model anyway, with flowing lines. It sits fairly low on the road and has a drag coefficient of 0.37, a 12% improvement on the old model.
The name Arnage, by the way, comes from the famous Le Mans circuit. It's one of the corners there. And the heritage with Le Mans continues with the name Arnage, as well as with the new concept car launched at Geneva, the Hunan Diaz, which, well, quite frankly, received a very mixed reception on press day. People were not quite so sure about it. Maybe Dr. Piège and his gang have misjudged badly what a Bentley buyer wants to see in the future. A manual gearbox, a mid-engined car. Not so sure about that.
The Arnage gets an all-new suspension, mounted on steel subframes with an independent double wishbone configuration, front and rear, which improves the ride and the handling. This is no wallowy large saloon, that's for sure.
Now, the Arnage and the Silver Serif are basically the same shape, apart from with the Bentley you get a few extra spoilers. And it's a shape that has grown on me tremendously since I've had this car. And of course the Bentley has this wonderful, wonderful distinctive mesh grille. But under the bonnet is what you want to know about, and this is where you get the 4.5 litre all aluminium engine from BMW. Now it's basically the same engine that's in the 740. Thank goodness it's been worked on, it's been modified. It now has twin water-cooled turbochargers. It pumps out 350 brake horsepower, 413 pounds-foot of torque, which makes it very, very fast. It's just a shame that when you flip the lid and you look at the engine, it's not a hand-built engine anymore. Now, as you would expect, stepping into a Bentley is an experience all in itself, with this gorgeous, finest Connolly leather, the wood, the chrome, the thick Wilton carpets that your feet almost get lost in. It's like spending a day in a gentleman's club. However, would you expect to find cup holders from a 7 Series in a Bentley? No, not really. Would you expect to find switchgear from a 7 Series in a Bentley? Again, no. And it's perhaps these controls for the climate system which disappoint the most. However, you get used to them. The rest of the car is just magnificent. These gorgeous cream dials, the chrome, the wood, the leather. It makes you realise the amount of work that's gone into producing this car. And what about back here? Well, as you would imagine, it's very, very comfortable. However, there's not the room that there used to be in the rear of a Bentley. Anyone over about 6 foot tall might have a bit of difficulty getting themselves comfortable. Your knees tend to be fairly high and you sit quite low. Apart from that, there are wonderful, wonderful electric seats here. And as for this, gorgeous picnic tables, ideal for strawberries and cream at Henley this summer. There are a lot worse places to be than in the back of here, that's for sure. A big fat cigar and a dry martini would go down very well right now.
It will be very interesting to see how Volkswagen develop the Bentley brand, as they will certainly have to do after paying so much money for it. The range currently consists of the Arnage and 4 variants of the Coupe, the soft-top Azure, Continental R and T, and the newest arrival, the Sedanka SC, which you may have seen Ken Gibson driving recently on Motor Week. Baby Bentleys, updated coupes, who knows what we'll see in the future.
Power to the rear wheels of the Arnage is handled superbly by a 5-speed automatic ZF gearbox, which has 2 modes, normal and sport. If you fancy a blast down country lanes, well, flick it into sport mode, and the ultra-fast kickdown will have you rocketing towards the horizon, so fast you'll hardly have time to catch your breath. It really is an astonishingly quick car. The growl you hear from the engine under normal driving becomes a full-blooded roar once you open the Arnage up. The throttle is light and crisp. There's no discernible turbo lag. One criticism of the car, though, is the amount of wind noise that comes into the cabin when cruising on the motorway, particularly here around the A-pillars. The brakes are superb thanks to a new power boost brake system with 4-channel ABS and micro alloy discs too. The ride is slightly firm, the handling is good, and the steering just nicely weighted to give the right amount of feedback.
0 to 60 comes up in 6.2 seconds, which for such a big car is still astonishing. Top speed has been limited to a mere 150 miles per hour. Gone are the days when the company wouldn't release power and performance figures describing them as merely adequate. Now they want to sing them from the rooftops. The old phrase about if you have to ask how many miles to the gallon it does, You can't afford it? Well, I suppose it's still relevant. But even if I could afford this car, I'd like to know how many miles it does do to a gallon or a tank. Are you sitting down? Well, 12 miles per gallon urban, 16 combined, with a tank that takes nearly 21 gallons. It'll set you back well over £60 to fill up. Still, most Bentley owners have about 4 other cars in the garage, so I guess they can afford it.
Despite its huge size, it's surprisingly easy to hustle this car fast down country lanes. The grip and the cornering are tremendous and the power just keeps coming and coming. Mind you, this is one car I wouldn't like to take down a narrow country lane. Meet something coming the other way, and it's doubtful if the driver will doff his cap and offer to move out of the way for you, governor. So, is the Arnage a good car? Certainly. Is it a great car? Possibly. Is it a car that's worthy of the Bentley mark? Absolutely. But can you say it's worth the £145,000 purchase price that this will cost you? Well, that has to be subjective. If this is just another car in your fleet, well, you probably hardly notice the dent in your bank balance it would take to buy this car. A new S-Class is half the price of the Arnage, for instance. You could probably buy a row of terraced houses in some parts of the country. But an ocean-going yacht is considerably more expensive than this. And that's the sort of context that you have to take with cars that cost this amount of money. Is it to be another rare masterpiece to hang on the walls of your mansion, or a Bentley Arnage? There's only one answer for me, and it's this. It may not be the best car in the world, but it certainly beats staring at a picture.